Minute and 32 seconds? It would also bother me if someone started now. So if they started a minute and 7 seconds early, I'd be like, well, that's not what the countdown says. If you're going to have a countdown, have a countdown. You don't have to have a countdown. No one. Yeah, and that's the truth. I do need to add milliseconds. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Look at all the people walking in now with high anxiety because of a countdown clock.
It's like they're in prison or something.
Exactly. That's true. I didn't think about that. In 19 seconds, the doors lock.
Okay, now that will get the anxiety.
Yes, yeah, me too. All right, guys, let's get started. It's so nice to be with you guys. Right, right at the countdown clock. Oh, I didn't cut it, Bella. I didn't cut it. It went down. Don't you worry. By the way, how did the conference with all your peers go and you telling them what we talked about yesterday?
Some of them were like, okay, cool. The others were just like,
Yeah, they just left. Yeah. If your teenager is missing, it's because Bella told them what we talked about here yesterday.
I have to do recon.
Yeah. No, I get it. Well, guys, it is so good to be with you guys again. I had a really enjoyable time with you yesterday talking about limiting beliefs and the lies that our teenagers tell about themselves. I see some familiar faces. Welcome back. I see some new faces. Welcome here for the first time. And today we're going to talk about anxiety. And I don't know if you noticed, but anxiety is a little bit of an issue amongst teenagers and young people today. In fact, I would argue anxiety infiltrates we as adults as well, certainly, but we see it very, very pronounced in the younger generations. So we're going to talk today about what it looks like for us as parents or caregivers of teenagers to try to help them cope with some of the anxiety that they are experiencing. So why don't we start with the definition of anxiety? I like this one. An overwhelming and prolonged sense of worry. A prolonged sense of worry. So it's not just a one-time thing or short-term thing. It's over time. We're just worrying. It's typically regarding a perceived future threat or imagined threat. So sometimes we experience anxiety based on something that actually is happening or we know will most likely happen. And then other times it is just completely imagined. It is in our head. The thing that I might add to this definition as someone who personally has also struggled with anxiety, thankfully God has delivered me from that, but it often does not even seem to connect with anything. There were so many times where I was on the state of literally some kind of anxiety or panic attack, and I could not even connect it to anything in that definition. I couldn't say, well, I'm having anxiety because of this, or I'm afraid this is going to happen. So I think this definition is accurate. I just don't think it goes maybe quite far enough because sometimes we just don't even have a clue. Sometimes our body has some odd physiological reaction, and we're experiencing anxiety and very weird. The first time I had a full-blown anxiety attack, I didn't know what it was. This goes back a number of years ago, and I ended up in the hospital being checked for a heart attack, which is actually a common thing that happens. You think, oh my goodness, I don't know what's going on, and turned out it was an anxiety attack, panic attack, however you want to describe it. And so yeah, I went on a journey of like, all right, I went through some counseling, I went through some med management, worked with my doctor, pulled in close with God, and was able to work through that, but not a great period in my life. Our teens go through that. I'm sure some of you go through that as well. And how do we identify? There's a lot of ways we could identify it, and sometimes it's that racing heart, which was definitely one of my symptoms. I could literally be sitting on the couch, laying on the couch, completely relaxed, everything's fine, and I'm just like, wow, why am I like? I feel my heart is racing. Tightening in chest, stomach butterflies, that feeling you get when you have a recital or a performance, or you feel like you have to public speak or whatever. You get that weird, like, nauseous butterflies. Tears or crying, very often for no apparent reason. They almost feel like they're just being physically forced out of your eyes. Dizziness and lightheadedness, high and low blood pressure. I had both, which was interesting. I never figured out why. Sometimes it was high and sometimes it was low, but I had to monitor my blood pressure for a while. Some of that's because I'm 46, but I'm at that point now where I take blood pressure medications. I thought that was for old people, but it's not. It's for 46-year-olds. Depression, anxiety, and depression so often go hand in hand. They are technically two separate things, but chances are very good. If you have a teenager who experiences anxiety, they also experience depression because they're just so closely connected. And then avoidant behavior. When I was at my worst, certainly I wanted to just step away from everything and everyone, and I wanted to lay on the couch and watch TV and nothing else. And some of that is normal, because sometimes we just like to lay on the couch and watch TV, and I understand that. But I quickly realized, okay, this has gotten weird. This is just like, I don't want to do anything. So some different ways that your teenager might be experiencing anxiety in their life. So this is interesting. Our most current research is showing that 1/3 of teenagers will experience an anxiety disorder. Now, that's not saying 1/3 of teenagers have anxiety sometimes. This is 1/3 of teenagers actually get to a point where if they went to a psychiatrist, they could be clinically diagnosed as having an anxiety disorder. So that's 1/3, not talking about the rest of teenagers who still experience anxiety. It may not get to a clinically diagnosable level. In fact, the statistics for that even show us that that number goes up when you're just talking about teenage girls. So the Pew Research Council, they went through and they surveyed teenagers. One of the questions that they asked them is anxiety a big problem with your peers? They wanted to know, do teenagers consider anxiety a big problem? 70% of them said, yes, this is a big problem in our peers. So this is not something that just the adults are recognizing or just the clinicians are recognizing. The teenagers themselves are saying, yeah, something is going on here. And we all know this. I mean, we don't need necessarily science and statistics to prove this, because we've all seen it firsthand. Anxiety prior to COVID was already ramping up big time. And then our response to COVID, whether you agree with the response or not, triggered intense anxiety amongst teenagers. I mean, we as adults, we went through this as well. We had our own anxiety as a result of COVID. And so now, here in 2023, we're experiencing amongst teenagers anxiety levels that we've never seen before. So feel free to share only as much detail as you want to share, because I know this is a small world. Some of you might know each other. Some of you might know each other's teens, and that's fine. But how have you seen anxiety play out in the life of your teenager? Or if you want to make it a little more obscure, how have you seen it play out in the life of a teenager that you know? Yeah.
My 27-year-old goes through some
Okay.
to help him deal with anxiety. So I'm thinking, he probably had it when he was a teenager, and I'm thinking, no.
Yeah, well, he's 27. We're quicker these days to identify and diagnose conditions like anxiety. And that might be good or bad, but either way, that's just the reality of the situation. So he's seeing someone now, even at age 27, to talk through that. I grew up in the 1980s. There's all sorts of stuff that our parents missed that none of us were aware of at the time. So I'm certainly not going to shame anyone in here who may or may not have missed something. We're in a different world these days. Yeah.
I could probably talk for 20 minutes in ways I've seen it, but I've seen it in irrational, what's that?
That's bigger than that, John.
Well, yeah. Irrational lies being recited
Yeah.
in the head, shut down with schoolwork, unable to really move forward with doing schoolwork, racing hard.
Yep. Yeah, the irrational lies is a big thing. I mean, a lot of you were here. We spent yesterday talking about those irrational lies, those limiting beliefs. They'll get you. Yeah.
Withdrawal.
Yeah. How so? Only share what you're comfortable sharing, but what did that look like?
It's not real specific, but when we as parents are aware of, I feel like there's this kind of constant change in how close our children are with us.
Yeah.
It's a fluctuation, right?
Yep.
And when there's kind of a longer period of being isolated, more withdrawn, then I kind of relate that to anxiety. And then when we've had a discussion about it, it usually is confirmed that
Okay, yeah.
it's something that they're worried about.
Yep.
It's something that happened in a relationship that they are
Yep.
in.
Okay.
Not engaged in much.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Well, after kind of struggling with this for years, I kind of cycle between the anxiety and panic attacks, and then when we're not having them, the fear of the
Yeah.
anxiety and panic attacks. Like, I'm okay right now, but if I go do this, I might have a panic attack. This might cause anxiety. Now I'm afraid because I know what that's felt like in
Yeah.
the past.
Yep. That's so it's no longer just about the anxiety of the moment, but having anxiety surrounding the fact that I might have to be back in that situation again. I was a youth pastor for 10 years and had one girl in particular, severe anxiety. She couldn't even sit in the church service. She would have to sit outside, and she would have anxiety leading up to Sunday, knowing that she was going to have to go to church. Some of us have that for other reasons, but for her, yeah.
I have anxiety issues that have subsided over the last decade and a half, so I'm fortunate that way. But my final two kids, our fourth son has anxiety issues where he has like full-blown panic attacks.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I will tell him some of the things that always helped me, like go and smell something with a strong smell.
Yeah.
And it worked for me, so
Yep.
I tell him that. And I said, and the other thing I tell him is this a rational thought? And sometimes he'll say, I don't know. And I'll say, well, speak it. Because
Oh, that's
if
good,
you
yeah.
speak
Yep.
it loses some power. And sometimes you sit there and say, wow, that was kind of a silly thought to have. And now our last son, our fifth son, people probably know him, he walks around with headphones. He's the one with autism. And we never really thought that he had anxiety issues at all except last year. And he doesn't speak, he's nonverbal. He speaks maybe 10 words a year. And so he marched into our room during prayer time in the morning and said, Dear God, help me not worry so much.
Wow, okay.
And it's like, you worry. You worry. And so now I'm worried because I can't tell what he's worried about.
Yeah. But wow, in some ways, what a blessing that you were able to even hear him say that. I mean, that's like a God send right there that you were there. That's great. Yeah. Wow. How else have you seen, thanks for sharing that. How else have you seen this play out in your teenager? Yeah, Amanda, right?
Yeah.
Big sister.
Yeah. I've seen it play out in the way of nausea and vomiting before competition.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
One
definitely.
in particular that I feel like doesn't get addressed enough is lack of sleep.
Mhm.
And then too much sleep with
Yeah.
those panic attacks can be really exhausting. But I know some teams stay up late at night playing video games. I'm not saying this is all teams, but sometimes that's their way of like trying to deal with it because they can't get their mind to shut off.
Yeah.
To be able to sleep at night so they dive into another world or where they can be someone or something else. But those are two of the biggest things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And the weird thing is, it's not just anxiety and not even just depression, but with a lot of mental health type stuff, you go through the list of what are some of the symptoms of, we'll just say anxiety. The opposite seems to be true. Well, a symptom of anxiety might be insomnia, not being able to sleep, or it might be sleeping too much. It might be you lose all your appetite, or you have a ravenous appetite and all you want to do is eat. Or a symptom might be weight gain or weight loss, and it just seems like it's always the two extremes. So it can be hard sometimes to diagnose. Even some of the things that I listed behind me a minute ago, a lot of those that I listed, the opposite is also true. Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
I'm a family physician, and the biggest problem I see with anxiety is that patient or family they just don't want to accept that it's a mental health disorder. They just find the right doctor that will diagnose this rare problem that they have. And
Okay.
it has to be able to be treated medically. It must be something that we're missing. And I see people after a very extensive workup, and it's just not that acceptance that this is, a mental health issue
Yeah.
that we need to focus on. And it breaks my heart because there's so much work that could be done in that area, but it's okay, we're going to do another test, we're going to find
Yeah.
exactly what's wrong. That's my struggle.
I'm glad you said that.
Stigma of mental illness.
It's still there, that stigma of mental illness. And I will say, to the younger generation's credit, I think that stigma is starting to go away. That pendulum might be swinging to the other direction, where now suddenly every single person has a mental health diagnosis and they're self-diagnosing, and their friend on TikTok told them that they have this. And so we've gone the other, you're not cool unless you have a mental health diagnosis. But to their credit, that stigma does seem to have gone away. So I appreciate you sharing that. So we've all seen it. A lot of us have experienced it. Let's talk about some ways we can help reduce this. And this is just kind of my list of 10. Some of this stuff I can relate to specifically because of my own anxiety, but also my experience as a youth pastor. But prior to that, I was a case manager at a residential treatment facility for a number of years, and working with teenagers with extreme behavioral disorders. And boy, that was a fun job. And for about 10 minutes. And then, so I want to talk through some ways that as parents, we can help our teens kind of identify or lessen the anxiety in our life. And this list could go on forever. So we'll just take it one at a time. Keep them busy. Number one, keep them busy. I found, not always, but I found when I was at my most anxious, and as I've worked with thousands of teenagers over the years, when they're at their most anxious, it's when they're bored, when there's downtime, where there's a transition time, and their mind starts on them. They start thinking things, feeling things, and all of a sudden they're in a full-blown panic attack, and nothing's really going on. So trying to keep your teenager busy, moving, doing things, not all the time. They still need their time to relax and settle down. But you might find that some of the times of anxiety are when there's actually very little going on. Yes, sometimes we're all going to the county fair, and there's going to be 1 million people there, and our teen is having an anxiety attack because they're in the middle of course, that is the case sometimes. But also they're taking a nap, they're laying in bed for the night, and all of a sudden the mind starts going. Number two, I would say provide them with structure and routine. Again, I mentioned that I worked with a residential treatment facility, and RTFs are all about structure and routine, not just because of anxiety, but for other reasons as well. The kids, even though they would say, I don't want structure, I don't want routine, I don't want rules, I don't want to be controlled, I don't want to be told what to do, blah, 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 they do want that. Even if they don't realize they want that. They find safety in the structure and routine. They find comfort in the structure and routine. And it absolutely helps to minimize the anxiety. So as you think about the teenagers in your life that you work with, that you live with, what can we do to create for them an environment with structure and routine so that they feel safe in that? One of the things we're going to talk about here in a minute is, does your house, your home, is it the safest place that they visit on a daily basis? Not visit, your kids aren't visiting your house. Hopefully not. The place, is that one of the safest places where they are on a regular basis? We'll talk more about that in a second, but provide them with structure and routine. Number three, and this one gets overlooked so easily, and encourage them toward a healthy lifestyle. Well, Arthur, you're saying my teen has anxiety, so all they need to do is drink some water and eat some baby carrots and they'll be fine. It doesn't hurt. I can tell you from my own experience, my anxiety started to lessen when I started to run. And by run, I mean like jog slowly. I am not a runner, but I would start doing walks, and I would start just doing some jogging. And it helps tremendously. There's all sorts of physiological reasons why running helps anxiety. There's all sorts of mental, emotional reasons why running helps anxiety. So just getting them in a place where they're taking their physical health seriously, what they're eating, what they're drinking, their level of activity, and certainly how much sleep they're getting. You know, most of the statistics nowadays are showing that teenagers, adolescents, they don't need 8 hours of sleep like what most of the time we hear. Well, people need 8 hours of sleep to function. That's really more of an adult statistic. Most of the research today is saying teenagers need something more like 9, 10 hours of sleep every night to really rejuvenate for the next day. That may not be realistic in some of their situations. They may not be willing to do that in some of their situations, but the ideal is that they're getting a really good night's sleep. So putting an emphasis on their physical health will really help significantly. This one's a little tough to address because I've seen this as a youth pastor a lot. Parents, not you guys, we're talking about the bad parents outside of this room. Okay? Not you guys. Anyone who's not here right now is a bad parent, okay? So, and if your spouse is not here, I apologize. I'm sure he or she is great. But I say that because I just have seen so many parents that are so high pressure with their expectations and standards of their children. Often it's academic pressure. You know, a teenager might come home with an A and the mom or the dad is wondering why it's not an A+. I mean, if I had gotten an A when I was in high school, that would have been like winning the lottery for me. And so just be careful and just kind of evaluate in your own life, in your own family. Are there ways that you're pressuring them or holding them to a high standard that they're not able to meet just yet? We do want to hold our kids to high standards. Let's not just drop to the lowest common denominator and not have standards in our households. One of the great things about homeschool families is that they tend to have very good standards and hold their families to very high standards. But sometimes we have to evaluate and say, is this standard, is this expectation right for this individual teenager? Yeah. Yeah, please, Bella.
Sometimes we'll actually put that extreme pressure to be perfect on ourselves.
Yes.
Like, my
That's a very good distinction, Bella, because it's not just, let's not just blame the parents here. And you have great parents because they're here. So this is, yeah. This is not just a parent thing, but look at our society, look at our social media. I mean, everything is designed to basically tell a teenager, you're not enough right now. You can't be enough until you have this, or until you do this, or until you have this status, or this identity, or whatever it is. And then, of course, there's anxiety when constantly you're being pressured and being told, sometimes very directly and sometimes indirectly, you're not enough. Yeah, in the back.
Can you speak about like the phrase, hey, just do your best?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it was Kurt Thompson or one that recently spoke about it on his podcast. That can kind of correlate to perfectionism, where sometimes the person, whatever their best is,
Yeah.
I don't know, can you?
Yes, so the question is, what do you think about the idea of do your best? And it's a little bit of a loaded question because in some ways, yes, that's a nice, cute little thing to tell someone, just do your best. You don't have to get an A, just do your best. And we've been saying that for years, and I'm not going to just throw that phrase under the bus. But when you do start digging into that a little deeper, there are times in our own lives as adults where we don't do our best in every single thing that we do. I don't know that we have to do our best with everything that we do. And I'm not talking about what God says about making sure everything we do to honor him, glorify. Of course we should do that. But there are things in my life that are a lower priority that I don't need to do my best at. And then there are things where it is at a level where I have to make sure that I am really, I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that I'm doing it right. So I think even within that idea of you don't have to get an A, just do your best, I think there's even some pressure in there. Like, I don't know if I can do my best. My anxiety, so we'll keep it in the context of anxiety, my anxiety is keeping me from even doing my best. So forget an A, I can't even do my best because of my anxiety. So I don't know, does that help at all? Does that give you an insight? What do you think? You're asking the question. I'm wondering if you have some thoughts about that. Yeah.
When our older daughter was in college, we used to say, do your best at what the Lord's asking you to do right now.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
One night, night before a final, she really thought she had to study. She had a friend who's having a panic attack. She said, look, if God's asking you to spend the night with his friend, go do your best to be a friend with her, and we'll just trust you down to the Lord.
Yeah. I like that distinction. I like that. Anytime you can bring God into the equation, I feel like we're on a good path. Did you have a yeah?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Through the years of parenting, I've started to say, like, not everything has to be an A.
Right.
Not even like classwork. Just, like cleaning a room. You have to, like, I think as homeschoolers especially, we bought into, some of us, maybe just me, of like, oh, we're going to we're going to just excel in everything. And then halfway through, I was like, that is way too much pressure on these kids.
Yeah.
This could be a C. This is just this is just a good enough.
Yep.
Because they were under the impression everything had to be done so well, and it's just way too much pressure. Even in classwork, with freshman in college, it was like, this class, maybe this is the one for an A. This is just, just pass it.
Yep.
They have to.
I really like that.
We all have learned. They have to learn. And the A should be following the Lord is the A. That's
Mm-hmm.
obeying him, following him, your heart, surrender to him. That's where we're putting our best effort.
Yeah. I really like that a lot. As adults, it's the same thing. We have so many things that are being asked of us in any given day. We don't have the time or energy to give our best to each and every one of them, nor should we. There are small tasks in my life that if I gave my best to, that would be a complete waste of my time when there's larger priorities that I should be giving my best to. Yeah.
Something that I'm good at doing with my friends, my mom friends, but I need to be better at with my kids, is saying not every day's best looks the same.
Oh, yeah.
That today's best may not be tomorrow's best or yesterday's best, but situation, you do what you can, and it may look different than what it did yesterday or even
Yeah.
an hour ago, or what it will look like in an hour.
Yeah.
But, right now, what can you do now?
Yep. I like that. Today's best. Just say that beginning. Today's best isn't
Today's best may not look the same as
yesterday's best.
or tomorrow's best.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah.
I just wanted to amend what I said. I didn't mean by that, following the Lord, like they're supposed to be these perfect Christians. That could be like just admitting when you're wrong,
Oh, yeah.
confessing your sin. Like, I didn't mean like, oh, we're gonna be,
Yeah.
perfect Christians either.
No, and that's a good distinction. There's no such thing as a perfect person, a perfect Christian. So, well, yeah, let's keep going. So number 5, create, and this is kind of what we alluded to earlier, create a safe, peaceful, non-judgmental home and family environment. Think about, now a lot of you are homeschool families, so you do spend a lot of time with your children in your home, and I love that. Go homeschool families. But, yeah, exactly. But think about the times where your teenager is not home with you. Maybe they are part of a co-op, part of a youth group, part of a sports team. They might have a part-time job. They go out with friends, whatever it is. So a lot of times where they're not with you. And you don't have a ton of control over what happens when they're not with you. And sometimes out in the real world, people are judgmental, and things don't perceive, the teenagers don't always feel like they're in a safe situation. Things are certainly not always peaceful. But what if our homes were all of that? Where your teenager knew, at least when I get home, I'm not going to be judged. I'm going to be loved unconditionally. There's not going to be yelling, chaos. It's going to be peace. I mean, it would be pretty cool if your home was the place where your teenager wanted to be. And in many cases, it probably is. I'm not assuming that is not the case. But think about your at-home environment right now, your at-home dynamic. Is your home creating a space that is able to help lessen that anxiety? Or are there things that maybe are helping it go up? And I don't say that judgmentally either, because sometimes it just takes us evaluating ourselves to say, hey, we could tweak that. We can make this better. We could do this. So what does it look like for your teenager to find their home, your home, the most peaceful, safe, anxiety-free place that they have? Help them focus on the present, mindfulness. In fact, I think someone, right over here, brought up some mindfulness techniques that they go find something that has a real strong, pungent smell, and let that smell kind of permeate your mind. It might just snap you out of some of the anxiety or some of the thoughts that you're having. There's other mindfulness exercises that include breathing, where you're breathing in for a number of seconds, you're holding it, and you're breathing out. One of the ones that we used to do with one of our foster daughters, she suffered from pretty extreme anxiety, is we would have her identify, all right, look around the room, tell us 5 things that you can see, tell us 5 things that you can smell. That's a tough one. You can't always smell 5 things at once, but 5 things that you can feel, 5 things that you can hear. And that started to center her. She had to focus on what is going on in the room. And not always, none of these are magic pills that fix everything, but it would start bringing her out of the negative thoughts that she had that were leading to her anxiety and making her more present in the moment. So if you're interested in more techniques like that, all you have to do is go to the Google machine, and you'll find a million different mindfulness techniques that may work on some level with your teenager. I think some of them are also weird that you would probably never try, but you as the parent can discern what may or may not work for your teen. So help them focus on the present, because so much of anxiety is focused on, well, what might happen in the future? Well, let's not worry about the future right now. In fact, God tells us not to worry about the future. However, that's probably an oversimplification of what God tells us to do, but you know where I'm going with that. Can we focus on the present? Yeah.
I just want to say something about mindfulness. We've had a training on mindfulness, and just as Christians, just be aware, if you are going to Google that,
Yeah.
there's a Buddhist root to that, and you might just want to be aware of that. I know some people like yoga, and some people don't like yoga for the same reason that there's a root in that. You might want to be mindful of that.
Yeah, be mindful. No, you're right, and I think that's a good distinction to me. That's kind of what I was getting at when I said there's some weird stuff out there, especially like you're saying as far as Christians, followers of Christ, believers of the Bible. There are some certainly mindfulness techniques that really can skew you in a different direction, like you said, into Buddhism, into Christian Science, into New Age, and they can get a little weird. And like we learned the other night, if you're trying to find your center, look toward Jesus, because he is the center.
Those
So,
of you that have children in school, be careful of that, because that's almost preached to children. So
yeah,
just kind of make a distinction.
yep.
I wouldn't throw that term around mindfulness.
Yeah, it does come with some baggage depending on what circles you've run in. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
One thing our pastor has recommended is have a song, a scripture, and a picture to kind of
Oh.
focus your mind.
A song, a scripture, and a picture to help focus your mind. I like that. Is it any song, or is it like something worshipful, specifically focused on God, or it could be anything?
What's addressing the issue you're having
Okay, yeah,
worry, then something that, kind of helps flip your brain in the direction of
Yep.
trusting God.
yeah. Yeah, I like that. Tell your pastor I approve. Yep.
Yeah, I was thinking about your last couple of slides, talking about not pressuring them to be perfect, or this one to help them to focus on the present. I was thinking, like, as a believer, we have a perfect holy God who has perfect holy standards, and we're not meeting them as parents. So
That's true.
We're trying to make them meet them as parents. We're being hypocritical. But I think that kids are also getting a lot of standards, not from the Bible,
Oh, yeah.
associated with the grace of Jesus Christ. They're getting a lot of standards from the world, from the internet, and from their phones. And they're trying to measure up to these standards. And they're going to be made fun of because they're not going to measure up to it. And then, like,
Yeah.
it seems like there would be a whole catalog of anxiety that would come with the judgmentalism from the phones and from their own man-centered opinions
Yep.
from their phones,
Yep. I think you're 100% right. And going back to the first part of what you said, the whole idea that none of us are perfect parents, let's not hold our kids to the standard of perfection. And in fairness, if you ever do get to the point where you are a perfect parent, then yes, hold your kids to that perfect level. Because if you can do it, they can do it. But until then, yeah. And then also, like what you were saying, it's not just about the parents holding to the standard. There's so many people telling these kids they have to be held to a certain standard, and they're not always high standards either, but sometimes they're quite low standards. All right, so number 7, maintain your own personal calmness. So let's talk about the parents outside of this room again, because they're the bad parents, you're the good parents. Have you ever seen some of those outside parents interact with their kids, and you think, no wonder their kid has anxiety? Yep. Point to the parent in the room where you feel like they've done that to their kid. No, don't do that. That would be horrible. But and in fairness, we have probably all been guilty of that. I was a foster parent for a number of years, and I know there were times where I left an interaction with my one specific foster daughter, whose name was Bella, actually. No relation, but her name was Bella, and I would leave an interaction with her thinking, well, I did not handle that the way that I should have handled that. I did not do number 7 100% of the time. But we do know that when we go into these power struggles with our teenagers, or they're in a state of anxiety, probably the worst thing we can do is start elevating our sense of anxiety and our tension and really going up against them, because that ain't gonna help. And we've all been in our favorite grocery store and see a kid crying and the parents just yelling at the kid, stop crying. I haven't seen that work yet. I don't know. So maybe that works in your house, but I've never seen a kid stop crying because the parents screamed at them to stop crying. But I don't know how often that happens with your teenagers. I don't know how often you scream at them to stop crying. But yeah.
All right, so I'll ask the Christian family question here.
Okay.
And I'm sure we're not the only ones, but many times Sunday mornings, we talk about personal calmness.
We all know where you're going with this. Please continue.
It's chaos central, trying to get everybody out of the house to get to church. Everybody goes bonkers. Everybody's screaming and yelling. You know, and we all know Satan doesn't want us in church.
Yeah.
He doesn't want us as a solid family unit. You know, other than praying about it, is there other, I mean, we have one family in our church that I think they had a fantastic idea. Everybody got old, as their kids got older, everybody got up, everybody got cleaned up, everybody showered, they got in the car, they got to church. They didn't say a word to each other until we got to church. Literally, and they had 7 kids.
It's good policy. Not speaking to your kids on Sunday. So that, I'll put that up there. Yeah.
But I mean, and I'm sure, it's something I'm sure most Christian families contend with.
I disagree. Honestly, I think that's unique to your situation. Something's kind of wrong in your family. Sunday.
Well, I am the husband and father, so that
Okay.
should explain the problem.
Oh no, oh my goodness, I remember being little kids and Sunday was the worst. I was a pastor's kid, so my mom would get us ready. My dad had the luxury of going to the church like hours before us, and he was probably just as glad. And oh, it would be horrible, and then like we would be on the verge of tears, and myself, my brother, my sister, and my mom would walk into church. Oh, hi, Lori, how's it going? Oh, we're doing good. And my brother and I are like, what? Like, I was literally threatened 10 seconds ago. So it's not, we can laugh about this, and we should laugh about this, because otherwise we'd start shaming ourselves and judging ourselves. But we're finding ourselves in good company that we've all done that. But we all recognize that if we can maintain our own personal calmness, it's going to go a long way to helping our teenagers maintain their own personal calmness. Number 8.
Arthur.
Yes. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I don't know if my suggestion will help at all.
I'm sure.
You know, I mean, I have 4 kids, and it can be chaotic getting out for whatever it is. It can be for church or whatever. What I found that has helped in my house is that we all have talked about, okay, we're going to just set an earlier time.
Good,
that
yeah.
we have to be ready. So let's say you have to get out of the house by 10:30 to go to church. Say, okay, we're going to be ready at 10. You're not going to be ready at 10. You're going to be ready probably at 10:30, right?
That's good.
So and just saying the expectation the night before, or for the week, what's the expectation? Okay, this is what we're doing. And, Sunday we're
That's
going
good.
to, church at this time, whatever it is. We're going to be ready at 10. And this is going to help us all kind of be happy going into church. And you're going to be more relaxed, and there'll be less chance for anxiety to occur, right? So it works, because they're into it. So, and then as the parent, having certain things organized also helps.
I love that, and I think that's very effective. I use countdown clocks. That keeps me. So get a projector, a screen, some countdown clocks. It'll be fine. Did I see another? Oh, yeah.
So I have 9 children, and when they were little, going to church or going anywhere was difficult, and
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. All right. Number 8. We do not do this well as a society. Celebrate their wins. We don't do good celebrating people's wins in virtually any context. I mean, even think about your own jobs. How often does your employer, your boss, whoever it is, how often are they celebrating your wins and your performance? And on those occasions when they do, how great does it feel? Are we celebrating the wins of our teenagers? And maybe they're not in a situation where they have quote unquote wins, but are we celebrating the characteristics that we see that are good and positive and healthy developing in them, or the traits, or are we encouraging them? Are we constantly being specific about what you see as a parent that they're doing well? We have to be careful not to just give general encouragement, like you're so great, you're so pretty, because that can start becoming meaningless. I have someone in my life who is very encouraging, and he seeks to encourage me regularly, but his encouragement kind of falls flat because it's usually very broad. It's not specific at all. It tends to be the same thing over and over again, and I've heard him tell other people the same thing. So it's kind of like, well, thanks for the attempt, but it's not doing it. But as you think about your specific teenager, what can you really target in on and say, I'm seeing this in you, and this is awesome. This is great. If we can start building the confidence, the self-esteem of our teenagers, it's going to help their anxiety. Now, we could run another whole seminar on helping our kids not be arrogant and overconfident, but we'll talk about it another time. But this is more taking a kid who maybe has low self-esteem. What can you as a parent do to encourage them, to celebrate their wins, to say, this was awesome, you really nailed it? Incrementally, and the focus of this phrase is incrementally help them face their fear. So I told you I had a girl in my youth group who had severe anxiety about sitting in the church service. So the plan was not, well, just throw her in there anyway and see what happens. No, of course, that would probably be traumatic for her. It might be traumatic for the people around her when she had a panic attack. But what could we do over a period of time to incrementally help her face that fear? And so we would have her actually sit in the lobby of the church. And everyone would go inside, and she would sit in the lobby. Often there'd be a youth leader with her, and she could hear what was going on, but she wasn't part of it. And then over some time, we had her move in toward kind of out of the lobby, but now right outside the doors of where the sanctuary was. And she would hang out there a little bit. Eventually, we moved her inside, but we gave her permission to sit all the way in the back. She didn't have to sit with the people. And then eventually, it took some time. I think it actually took a few months. Eventually, she was sitting with everyone, participating in the group, because we helped her face the fear incrementally. We don't want to hurt our kids. We don't want to put them in a situation where they're afraid of water, so we'd throw them in the pool. I know that's probably how a lot of us learned to swim, but that's how I learned how to swim. But how can we incrementally help them begin to face their fear? So if they're having anxiety about something specific that they're fearful of, think through what are some steps, what are 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 or 10 steps we can incrementally take to start helping them get through and get toward that fear. Does that make sense? Okay, I want to be careful with that one, because if you forget the word incrementally, it could be a damage to your teenager, and I don't want us just writing down face their fear, suck it up, it's fine. Nothing's going to happen. Get in there. It's not that at all. Number 10. Not everyone who has anxiety needs professional help, of course, because if everyone who had anxiety needed professional help, we'd all need professional help. But some of our kids absolutely do. And you can do everything that's great as a parent, and you should do those things, and all the things we've talked about today are great ideas, and the feedback you've given are great ideas, and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they need to check in with a doctor, their family physician. Sometimes they need to check in with a therapist, a counselor, a psychiatrist, a life coach. Like I said yesterday, I know a really good one. Works with teens, you'll love him. He's super funny, you'll like him. Depending on the level of anxiety, though, they might need some kind of professional intervention. And so do the research to figure out, and like, what do they really need? There is a difference between a family physician, a therapist and a counselor, a psychiatrist, a coach. Those are 4 different disciplines, and your child might benefit from one over the other. So seek professional help if it gets to a point where you think it's kind of getting out of control, or maybe even before it gets out of control, being more preemptive in that regard. So this is Harvey Cedars. A scale of, a list of 10 is just not enough. I feel like we have to go big or go home. So I'm going to give you a bonus one. I know you were not expecting this. I know some of you are going to have to get up and leave and say, Arthur, you said 10, now you're giving me 11. This is anxiety all over again. This is not helping. What's that? This should be, actually, you're probably right. Help them develop an attitude of gratitude. And it must be true because it's cutesy and it rhymes, right? And I actually hate the fact that it's cutesy and it rhymes. I probably, every time I see this slide, I want to like rephrase it so it's not cutesy and it rhymes. But whatever, it's cutesy and it rhymes. And it also happens to be profoundly true. In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God. I mean, sometimes we have long thoughts and conversations and research into what's God's will for my life. If only there was a verse in the Bible that said this is the will of God. If only, and God's like, yo, here it is. In everything give thanks. So as we think about that, put that in the context of anxiety. As we are counting our blessings, name them one by one, count our many blessings, see what God has done. Our anxiety is going to start going down. As we recognize the incredible blessing it is to receive the gift of salvation from our Heavenly Father through Jesus Christ, and receive His mercy and His grace and His love and His forgiveness and His salvation, that in and of itself is more of a blessing than we could possibly ever need or deserve. And then above and beyond that, look at how blessed we are to live in this country. And I know we're divided. I know we could talk about all the horrible things that are going wrong in the country right now, and I get it, and those things are horrible, and we should talk about those things. But look at the country that we are blessed to live in. We are still blessed to live in this country. Look at the families that your teenagers are part of. You guys, they're blessed to have you as parents, to have a safe home, to have a roof over their head, to have food and shelter and friends and water and entertainment and enjoyment in life. If we take time to show gratitude, and if our teenagers take time to show gratitude, when you are in an attitude of gratitude, when you're in a state of gratitude, it's hard to simultaneously also be experiencing anxiety, because we're just grateful. We're just grateful to God as a teenager. We're grateful to our parents, ideally. How can you help your teenager develop that attitude of gratitude? Oh, yes. Yeah. If you create a culture within your own home, a culture of gratitude, that is going to spill over to them. So it is so important that we as parents start that and model that and set that example. Lead by example, yep. So I've given a whole bunch of ideas, 11 ideas. You guys have also given a lot of feedback, but in our final minutes, I want to just kind of turn the floor over again and just ask the question, how have you helped your teenager reduce their own anxiety? What has worked for you, or if you want to say, what have you seen worked in other people's houses or homes? Love to hear. Let's collect some of the wisdom from the group. Yeah, Amanda.
I have a few, I'll try and summarize, but combining two of the things that we talked about earlier with the incrementally and then the doing your best, there was a lady saying, you were saying do your best each day, but sometimes it's do your best each hour. And something that I've been trying to focus on lately is, okay, and this is more on the edge of when you're crippled with depression and anxiety, but if, okay, you can't shower because you're that anxious, or if you can't even get out
Yeah.
of bed, doing the smallest things and then being proud of those small victories. So if you can't shower, if you can just use baby wipes to wipe your face off or wash your face, if brushing your hair, it's gotten matted because of your anxiety or depression, just taking your fingers and gently combing through the ends and like being proud of the tiny
Love it.
victories, and affirming that. So if your teenagers do something, even if it's small, focusing on their wins, no matter how small they are.
That's good, Amanda.
And another one that I wanted to share was, that ties into the Bible. Like even our Bible characters and people had anxiety. Moses had a stutter. If you've ever met anyone who has a stutter, and when they get anxious, their stutter gets way worse.
Yeah.
So like there was anxiety going all the way back to Bible times, and just affirming that like teenagers aren't alone in this. That every kind of person has had anxiety.
Yeah, very much so. Both very good words. Thank you. Yeah.
An attitude of forgiveness, and you can display that to your kids through, we all come with baggage.
Yep.
Maybe I'm the only one in this room, but just from our family, and if you're resentful to your own parents, for all the things that happen to us all, you gotta talk openly about these things and share that with the kids, try to forgive them, they did what they thought was right or whatever, but we all fall short.
Yeah.
And I fall short. So, I think that's one thing that
I love that.
open conversations about all these things.
Yep.
Don't leave anything under the rugs.
Confession, forgiveness. There's nothing more healing just about. I mean, if you can truly forgive someone, it changes your whole affect. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Roy was saying there, also an opportunity to show our children grace when that door is open and available. I think in earlier years I was a little more less aware of that, and then as I grew in understanding of God's grace and mercy in my life, I was able to then share them that grace and mercy and not always be so chill.
Yeah.
Never miss that opportunity to share. And the other thing is, when we're dealing with children with anxiety, we first also might want to examine where their positioning in Christ is. We need to never forget that, and our children need to be laid at the feet of our Savior for their surrender to Him as Lord in their life. And understanding that anxiety, the Bible speaks clearly of this. We don't need, no disrespect, I'm not going to Google to find, I'm going to the Word of God that is given to us. Anxiety is a sin.
Yep.
We need to address it as sin and pray with them, be open with them that others deal with anxiety and sin, but the way to mediate that is our Savior, is to rid ourselves of that sin and focus on Him. Yes, in the moment is important, but we are looking long. We're on this earth for a period of time to be used for His good and His glory. So keep your focus on that, not on your current situation.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that their situation isn't real. It certainly is. I'm saying the Bible speaks to it and clearly answers that. We're going to pray with them. We're going to disciple them, bring them to the Word of God, and let that do its work in their heart.
Amen. Amen. Multiple exclamation points. Yeah. I saw a hand somewhere in the back, or maybe I'm making that up.
I think anxiety can be a sin. I don't think it necessarily is a sin.
Okay, so can I stop right there? Because we're about at a time, and we are about to fight it out. So I think we could probably take sides on that and fight it out and punch each other. But you guys you take it outside go take that outside, gentlemen. We'll surround you guys and cheer you on. But yeah, and yeah.
I was going to say really practical, based on like the first couple of things about keeping them busy and structure and everything. Like I found it challenging at one point to be enforcing a lot of structure against
Oh, yeah.
Accountability, somewhere to be.
Yeah.
Maybe a break from siblings who are losing their faith. Like,
Yep.
it worked out well in a lot of cases.
That's a great idea. And certainly they're giving her structure at work. She doesn't get to not have structure at work. Yeah, that's a great idea. Anyone else? Right, it's not coming from the parent. Yep. I know I saw at least one or two more hands. Yeah.
Something I found helped tremendously is my daughter's able to give me the feedback that when she said I was worried about her being anxious, it was the feeding loop, and I needed to get myself in that
Okay.
calmness and trusting the Lord myself and presenting it as sort of like, you're going to be fine. You know, this is going to be fine, instead of worrying and watching.
That's a good, yeah. So your anxiety about her anxiety was giving her anxiety. And you were, that's,
Giving me anxiety.
yeah, exactly. It is, yeah, that makes sense. All the way in the back, Doug.
One thing that I found helped a lot of kids that were in our youth group was encouraging them to get a job at a Christian camp.
Oh, yeah. Do you serve on the board of directors anywhere? Is that?
I tell them any camp that's got a program for developing their staff.
Yep,
There's a difference. There's camps where you just work.
yep,
There's camps where they try to develop their staff. There's something about high school kids being able to relate to college Christians
yeah,
that is quite different than talking to parents or Sunday school teachers or anything else. And the ones that I grew up with that actually did work in a camp are still solid Christians today.
yep.
The ones that just went to Sunday school have lost track of their way.
That's a good word. Do you know of any camps that do that? Is that? Hey, just to affirm what Doug just said, I didn't grow up at Harvey Cedars, but my wife and I met at camp. She was a lifeguard, I was a counselor, you know how that is, summer camp. 27 years later, we're happily married. Well, she is a nurse now. She wasn't a nurse when she was 15. Yeah. But, so I want to respect our time here, and so I'm going to actually, oh, I know what the problem is. So obviously it's a very serious issue that our teenagers are working with. It's one that just coming to something like this even just helps us have a new awareness of it in the life of our teenagers. And not just hearing from me, but one of the biggest reasons that I encourage so much interaction is because the wisdom in this group far surpasses the wisdom that I have as an individual. So hopefully today there was a lot of wisdom that we crossed over and stuff that is going to be very, very valuable as you kind of leave here. So my kind of takeaway question is, how will you help your teen reduce their anxiety in the next 7 days? So I'm not going to ask for hands on that one, but as you think about everything that's been discussed today, are there 1 or 2 or 3 techniques that you think we can try that? That's a good thing to try to implement in our home. And then before we go, I just did want to tell you real quick about 3 resources that we have. If you have adopted or foster teenagers, adopted or foster teenagers, or maybe your church has an orphan care ministry, my wife and I put a video curriculum together called Trusting the God of the Gospel. It's designed specifically to help Christian parents and youth workers talk to adopted and foster teenagers about God because of some of the common barriers that kids from a trauma background tend to have toward the gospel. So I know that's a pretty niche audience, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about that, but if that's something you want more information about, I do have copies of it back there. I'd be happy to talk to you more about that. So as you know, I'm a life coach for teenagers, and we run a program called Mindsets to Methods, in which we tackle 7 humongous issues that teenagers face today, from developing healthy mindsets to identity formation, asking the question, who am I, before we ask the question, what do I want to do? Leadership development, having our teens identify as leaders and then recognize that they have a responsibility to be a quality leader. We talk about relationships, the proximity principle, that the people with whom our teenagers spend the most time are the people they tend to become the most like. So how can we help our teenagers craft a relational world that is intentional toward helping them become who they want to be? Communication. What does it look like to have polite, professional communication with adults in your life, with your parents, your teachers, your bosses, your coaches, whoever it is? And then wise decision making. How do you make decisions in light of who you want to be, or more importantly, who God wants you to be? So we have one-on-one private coaching options. We have group coaching options. Everything is virtual, so it doesn't matter where you are. In fact, last night we had our group coaching call on relationships, and we had 2 teenagers from Northern Ireland. So we're getting international now. So if you're interested in more, you want to get more information, hear what that program is like, jump on a call with me. We can talk about what's going on in your house, how this might help your teenager, and see if it's a good fit for you guys. And we have flyers in the back. Feel free to grab a flyer and book a call with me anytime. And then the last thing, if you're like, Arthur, this is the greatest parent training I've ever experienced in my life, later this month on June 29th, we actually have a virtual parent training in which we're actually talking about the proximity principle. So it's a parent training in which we'll help you talk to your teenagers about how they can be more intentional about creating their relational world. There's no cost or obligation to that, but we do ask you to register, and there's a website there and a QR code there, and that. All right, my friends, I'm going to close in prayer, and like I said this morning, I'll be with you guys for lunch, and then I need to head home. So if you have any questions or anything for me, I'm not in a rush right now. I'll stick around, and then